Hello, I'm Lee Morrison and welcome back to Bespoke Addict YouTube channel. I have here the shoe which last week in the previous two videos was stripped of all polish and then it was shrunken with steam onto this Foster and Son fixed shoe tree inside. For those of you that didn't see the previous two videos, this is a ready-to-wear shoe, and it's with use the skins had really stretched. The shoes are my size, but they've stretched a lot over the vamp, and they've stretched a lot around here. Now, to be fair, they are ready-to-wear shoes, not bespoke shoes. You wouldn't expect on a ready-to-wear shoe to have such a tight fit. And quite often with my ready-to-wear shoes, I do resize them and reshape them onto this particular pair of trees. I love the fit on me. Now, if we bring across, this is the other shoe in the pair. This is the original condition, obviously with its polish. And there's quite a lot of difference now. Obviously the skins are a different colour, the polish has been removed, but this shoe is dramatically tighter and less baggy than the, on the tree. We've got virtually, it's all resistance. There's no springiness. There's no spongy areas. The toes are solid. On this one, it's not the case. This one's not been treated. It's very spongy. The toe moves about. We have an awful lot of movement here. There's at least 10. Actually, it might even be more than 10. Might be 12, 14 millimeters of there's excess skin flopping about here, and particularly coming down into this area. That's all disappeared on this shoe. If you haven't already seen, do see the previous video showing the shrinking process. It's quite a long video. It's difficult to edit it shorter because of the amount of commentary. All of the commentary is actually quite important to the process. So yeah, do see that one. I'm very pleased with the outcome. In fact, sometimes I have to come back at this stage and say, well, a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and I'll redo the process. But I'm not going to. It doesn't need it. They're absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I've lost an awful lot of excess. You know, very pleased. What I'm going to be doing today, the skin surface suffers. It had already suffered because I've been wearing them. They've been heavily worn, and they've got various scratches and chips and marks. But particularly in the vamp area, the shoe flexes a lot through walking. They crack, the surface cracks. And the steam process makes the cracking worse, which if you're looking to remove the cracks is actually a good thing. As I explained in the previous video, when a shoe cracks, the skin surface is kind of put together and it flexes about, but it stays flat. When you steam the shoe for shrinking, the cracked surface it sort of expels, it opens up and it lifts up. And I've got quite a few areas that it's lifted here, and the cracked sort of faces are exposed. So I'll be able to sand those off with abrasives. So there's a few, it's quite a few, but they'll all sand out quite easily. Whereas if the surfaces are buttered together, as you sanded them, they sort of sink in and escape the paper, and they're very difficult to sand out if you don't steam them first. And so I'll take the surface off this shoe with various grades, and I'm going to do the edges as well. I always like to sort of take the edge back to, and all the heels included, I like to take that back to fresh skin and recolour that. I use dark sort of leather moisturisers. I'm not really a fan of the glitzy, the very shiny sole edging. It's just a personal thing. I don't like it. None of my shoes have that, but it's a personal taste. So let me just refocus the camera so that we can we'll zoom in and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm doing here, get a better view of the surface of this skin. What I'm going to be doing, like I say to you, is removing these dark areas here. They're actually cracks and damage to the surface of the skin. So I'm going to be taking off a very fine piece of the skin. It's literally microns, and it's not a lot, but it does make an enormous difference. There is quite a deep crack around here. Truthfully, I'm unlikely to be able to get that out in its entirety, but I'll definitely be able to reduce it, and yeah, probably be able to reduce that by about 60%. It's extremely deep. I don't know how that's happened, but it is in a rather sort of discreet part of the shoe. I'm not too worried. And this is what I'm going to be using. Just wet and dry paper. This is 400 grit. What we got here, this dark one is probably 80. Yeah, 60 grit or 80 grit, I'm not sure. I haven't got the codes on the back, but it's quite sharp. I don't think I'll be needing that one. And then this one is that's 120 grit. I'm going to start with that. So yeah, I'll start with 120 grit, and I'm going to put a pair of gloves on. I don't particularly like scraping my skin with the paper, so just to try and protect my skin a little bit, just wear the gloves. And yeah, this looks horrifying. I'm going to start with 80 grit, just emery or sandpaper type stuff. Actually, sandpaper tends to disintegrate. This is more the type of thing that might be used in car body repair, you know, or for sort of sanding varnish. But here we go. Just take a tiny bit. I'm going to start on the edge here, just in circular motions, and you have to avoid the stitching. Very, very important to avoid the stitching. Straight away, that's starting to remove. This is not going to be a difficult job. These shoes are not in bad condition. Yeah, that's it. That's removing very easily. If there were deeper cracks, and I'd be using a far more aggressive, as I say. I think that's 80 grit. It's very sharp, but this 120 grit seems to be working just fine to begin with. So yeah, it's quite a rough bit down there. Let's just avoiding the stitching. If you sand over the stitching does disintegrate, and you'll end up obviously having to restitch the shoe. And it's not a difficult job. You've got to go slowly, methodically, and patiently, and you can feel the difference immediately under the tip of the finger. So it's just a case of working over the whole shoe. I'm working up to the stitching, but not into the stitching. If I sand the stitching, it'll just disintegrate, it'll fray. I have done that before, and you know, restitching them is not impossible. You know, it's just it's another job to be done. But these shoes do not need stitching, so I'm determined not to damage the stitching. Blow away the dust, give you an idea. Let's just work a little bit harder into the welt there. It's quite mucky, and yeah, this is rather hard and dry. Yep. So it'll probably take around about, I don't know, 30 minutes to go all the way over with this 80 grit paper. With a folded edge, I can work against the toe caps there, sort of almost fishing underneath the toe cap. But yeah, this is something I do to many of my shoes. If they've got a little bit of there's damage to the toe caps there. That's probably been done driving actually. That can happen to a brand new pair of shoes. All this cracking is due to excessive wear. But these areas are due. I could have worn these for the first time as a brand new shoe and done that sort of damage, but you can easily smooth it out. There we go, just a few little rubs with a relatively sharp paper, and it's all but out. So I'll do the whole medallion area quite quickly, because this toe cap, because the toe cap doesn't flex, it doesn't generally crack, but it's vulnerable, especially if you use them for driving, or it gets kicked into the pedals. And I'm sure that these little bits of damage on the toe caps, that's how that's occurred. So I work quite quickly around there because there's not a lot to do to the toe cap. I'll still do it with the sharper paper first, then I'll go for a light paper afterwards. There we go. Let's have a look. Yeah, it needs to go a little bit deeper, so I'll just go back to it. I know this looks very surprising, quite horrifying even, but I've done this to so many pairs of my shoes and it's not visible, there's no evidence on any of them. These are not a bespoke shoe, they're a very pleasant bench-made Northampton shoe, and I wear them an awful lot. They were a gift from my wife. But as regards value, they're not terribly valuable, but I do this to some really quite valuable bespoke shoes. If damage has occurred, it has to be repaired, and this is one of the better ways of doing so. So just There we go. That should be adequate with the, it's still a bit dark here, just give it a very light rub. It's 120 grit. And I do want to go through the brogued area. It's quite dark. Residue of old polish obviously that didn't come out with the cleaning process. It's obviously been affected by the steam. So if I take a fresh, I'll fold the paper again, take a fresh edge, and I'm literally just going to work with the edge of the paper between the stitching. I don't want to be touching the stitching. If you touch the stitching, you rub through it. So great care in that area. So if I use the flat, go over it with the flat, I'll be just rolling straight over the stitching. So, and it'll be the same in this area where we're between the broguing lines, avoiding the stitching by just using the very edge of the paper. We do have some more areas around here that are they're damaged. They've got marks. Once again, I think that's been done from driving. I can't work out how else that would have happened. This is not through where, you know, just general overuse. This is I'm sure this is a driving damage. So let's give that a good sand. Flat of my thumb. Press on quite hard. Oh yes, that's removed very quickly. So it's a very simple process. It looks quite brutal, but I haven't found another way of resurfacing a skin. So this skin has already been chemically stripped. It's been steamed with a hot iron and a wet towel, and now we're giving it more insult with abrasive paper. The fine bits to come of the moisturising, the skin will enjoy that enormously, and it will revive this skin. Any dryness from all of these processes will be completely revived. It will look beautiful. It's difficult to imagine when you see a shoe in this state looking rather sorry for itself, but yeah, it's not difficult. I'm going to stop with the shoe's not complete yet. It does need quite a lot of work, but this is fairly repetitive, and I'm actually going to go for a much lighter paper. Not that one. Let's have a look. This one's 400. Yeah, 400 grit. Let's tear a little bit off. It's a good finishing paper. You can finish with 600 or 800 if you really want an extremely smooth finish. So let's do the caps. So once again, completely avoiding the stitched areas. This is 400 grit, just for a finer finish. I find the 400 grit's smooth enough, to be truthful with you. There are smoother papers, 600, 800, but I don't generally go that low. It doesn't need it. So it's just exactly the same process as what you did with the larger grit. Just repetitive. So I'll just show you a few areas. I'm not going to record the whole process because it will take about an hour, and it's very repetitive. So extremely important to stay away. Extremely important to stay away from the stitching. You can work up to it but not across it. I can't stress that enough. The stitching will disappear very quickly. Now this area needs to return to the sharper grit, the 120. And a few seconds of work. And then back to the 400. As I said, it's quite a repetitive process. I'm going to stop there. I've only done probably 10% of the shoe, but it gives you a good idea of what to do. What I'm going to show you is the edging. The edging really needs to be stripped, and that does need a much more brutal paper. We've got here these like engineer's papers. Let's use this white one. I think this is around about 80 grit, very sharp. So I just use a little piece on the edge of my finger. Be careful not to let the paper touch the skin. It's a little bit sharp for this skin, but it's good for the edging of the sole. So quite hard work. There we go. And it does clog the paper very quickly. If you rub it against another bit of paper, it will reduce the clogging. So this will have to be done with 3 papers. This one, which I think is 80 grit, I'll go back to the 120 grit and then finish it finally with the 400 grit. And the heels as well, all the old sort of polish and resins that are built up on the edge of the heel. Just rub that off, avoiding the shoe skin. These are very tough old skins on the soles and heels, but does take rather a lot of punishment. There we go. Just fold that over. I'll go for a fresh bit. But it's very repetitive, so once again I won't do the whole edging. Just do a little bit just to give you an idea. There we go, that's the rough area off. Just do one last rough cut here. Just very carefully, avoiding the shoe skin, just doing it on top of the welt edging there. Get that one out of the way. Go for a finer paper. This is 120 again. And the bits on the heel. It's quite physical work, quite hot work. And as I say, I'm not going to, on camera, I'm not going to do the whole thing. It's so repetitive. Just do a little bit, give you a sense. And finally back to the finishing paper, which I'm finishing with 400 grit. There we go. There we go. That's it. Just blow the dust out of the way. Now that's a very smooth edge, very smooth heel. You compared to this is rough and scraped. It's dreadful. That will polish up beautifully. A finished edge like that, you either use the traditional sort of shiny shoe sole edging. My personal choice is I use moisturising cream, a coloured cream, very, very dark brown. That's my choice. So there are the 2 choices, but that's how you prepare it for that finish. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to continue off camera the rest of the stripping process. I've given you a good sense of what's involved. It's purely repetitive. So yeah, there's no need to keep all of that on film. It'll take about an hour. So I'm going to stop here and we'll come back to this shoe when it's completely resurfaced and smooth and ready for the moisturising and colouring and polishing. Once again, thank you for joining us here on Bespoke Addict YouTube. If you found this film useful, please give it a thumbs up and do subscribe. You'll get the regular videos as they come. They'll be straight in your inbox. Once again, thank you for watching. I'm Lee Morrison. This is Bespoke Addict YouTube channel.